Hello, world and universe. Welcome to the Trevor Donald Experience. Manifest your truth. We're going live tonight on a Wednesday night. And I know this happened a few weeks ago, but I wanted to do a live on former NBA Gilbert or NBA All-Star Gilbert Arenas getting arrested and indicted on an alleged illegal gambling and poker games at his ENCINO mansion in California. And what is happening? We've asked this question before. What is happening to some of our black athletes? But the difference in today's time, we're talking about retired athletes, not active athletes that are currently playing and that are in their 20s, teens, late teens, early 20s, that's just starting to galvanize themselves through life and figure things out, going from poverty to millionaires overnight. I'm talking specifically about Gilbert Arenas, who's 43 years old, who's a retired NBA player. And you're seeing many of our athletes, especially our black athletes, that have this kind of capricious arrogance about thinking that they can do whatever they want to anybody at any time and do anything and not bear up to the responsibilities of making bad decisions and being surprised by the negative consequences behind them. And that includes Shannon Sharpe. As you all know, for those who follow me, I recently did a video and I did a live on Shannon Sharpe and his debacle. He's 57 years old, retired Hall of Famer, NFL football player who made a very, very poor decision that has cost him dearly with the allegations that he met this alleged 19-year-old woman at a gym. What kind of auspices is that? You start hanging out, you start talking to a complete stranger, hanging out with somebody you know nothing about. She's young enough to be your daughter, and then they start engaging in a relationship all the way up to at least 3 years. So she was 22, and then that went haywire, as we know, and he ended up having to make a civil settlement of $23 million, but also he was negotiating allegedly a $100 million deal for his podcast. And of course, ESPN let him go. He was contracted to do the NFL this year. He got fired from there. His sponsorship for his Shay Shay and his nightcap with Chad Ochocinco, you're seeing the sponsors run for the hills. And so he didn't just fumble a $23 million bag in losing a civil lawsuit. He fumbled a $100 million bag that he was potentially going to get here recently. And then you have Gilbert Arenas. This gentleman comes out of Arizona, University of Arizona. For anybody that knows the backstory that don't know the backstory on Gilbert Arenas, played in the early 2000s. He was a second-round draft pick by Golden State. And then after 2 years, he signed a 6-year, $60 million deal with the Washington Wizards. So that's $60 million. And then at the end of that contract, he signed a 6-year, $113 million deal. So he signed almost $200 million worth of contracts with the Washington Wizards alone, who's, as anybody that follows the NBA basketball, we all know that the Washington Wizards is a lower tank team. They have never been a winning franchise or built a legacy of winning and winning championships ever. But Gilbert made almost $200 million off of one team. But through that journey, I'm taking you back, which is a lead into now. Gilbert Arenas was the NBA player who allegedly brought in a bunch of guns after he got into an altercation. NBA players love to gamble on planes and play a lot of card games in the hotels after games. They gamble playing card games on the airplane. They do that, a lot of that, a lot of it, and especially the black players. Here again, there is some kind of racial division. You don't hear about a lot of the white players doing that. And it's interesting in that dynamic of gambling is that you are 20, 21, 22 years old. I want to say hi to everybody that's joining in. I appreciate that. You're 21, 22 years old. You become an instant millionaire. One of the biggest problems with these athletes today, and especially the black athletes, is that their income that exacerbates quickly in an uprise, but their intelligence, their maturity, and definitely their education stays stagnated, generally in high school or in college. You have to remember these guys have been told yes, yes, yes. Some have been told yes as early as 8, 9, 10 years old, never heard the word no. Where am I from? St. Louis, Missouri is where I'm coming from. They've never been told no. And if there's never been a certain pressure to push the elements of their development as far as personality, as far as maturity, physically, mentally, spiritually, these people get stuck. And so you see this with a lot of athletes. We make these assumptions and presumptions that just because somebody's 26 or 28, 30 years old, you've been seeing them on TV for at least 10 years, they can play that sport that they have honed in on to become an expert at. But that's about all they're experts at, is just playing that game. The rest of their life is a complete debacle or a complete mess. Or you would say that they've elevated in that one particular area, baseball, football, or basketball, and become pristine and expert at that. But as far as the rest of their traits, their characteristic markers, those stayed here. So the maturity, the psychological assessments, how to navigate and make good decisions. We make the presumption and assumption that they know how to do that. And that's not necessarily true. These guys have had handlers around them, a certain umbrella over them their entire lives, and they don't know how to go out and hunt their own food on their own, so to speak. They know how to bounce a basketball, but the rest of their lives, their personal lives, and the decisions that they're making, especially with the women they decide to have children with or date or even marry, a lot of times it doesn't make an ounce of sense, and the average person can see that that's a poor decision 10 miles away. So Gilbert Arenas, NBA player, second rounder, goes to Golden State, then he goes to Washington, signs almost $200 million worth of contracts with the Washington Wizards, gets into it over gambling. Now, after these games, where these guys do not have degrees in economics, they don't have a law degree, they don't have a business degree, you would think, as opposed to gambling, doing something that's not going to nurture your intellectual, philosophical, strategic decision-making skills whatsoever, is just an entertainment game, and you got all this money, you don't know what to do with it. Instead of spending that time gambling, what about picking up a book on finance, on economics, on legal contracts? And the smart players, they do that. Kobe Bryant was not a gambler. Even though he didn't go to college, he spoke 5 languages, lived overseas. Kobe was a different kind of guy. And he was definitely different than Gilbert Arenas. So in doing this live, if you have young boys or young men that you're raising in your household, you should listen to this in the sense that be like Kobe. Don't be like Gilbert Arenas or Allen Iverson, unfortunately. Kobe was nurturing his brain. Grant Hill, another gentleman that you could see, even though he went to college at Duke, you could tell that he's reading a book. He's not gambling. You can look at these athletes and tell who is participating in wasting time and who is participating in optimizing their time. Your most important commodity in life is your time. It's your utility, it's your commodity, and how you use that will make a difference in how you live. Allen Houston was another one, went to the University of Tennessee, very smart, intelligent guy. So with Gilbert, Love to gamble, love to laugh and joke. He has Gil's Arenas. You can watch him and see what his personality is like. He gets into it with Javaris Critton, I think that was his name. Back in the day with the Washington Wizards over a gambling debt, and Gilbert wanted his money. Javaris was not a highly paid NBA player. He was on the lower totem pole of the team. And the weird thing about it, Gilbert was in that same position as Crinton or Javaris Crinton when he came out of the NBA. Gilbert was living paycheck to paycheck. His first year's salary was not $1 million. He was a second round draft pick, and he had spent all of his money before the season even started. So he's gambling with a guy that doesn't have the same amount of money. They get into it. Of course, Gilbert decides to tease and berate him and harass him about owing the money, and the guy hadn't paid him yet, and Gilbert Arenas decides to bring a bunch of guns to the arena, to where his place of work, to the Washington Wizards arena. Subsequently, Gilbert gets arrested. To make a long story short, he was also, not only was he on a very lucrative multi-million-dollar contract, he was also making $5 million a year with Adidas as Agent Zero. He had been a two-time All-Star. So his trajectory was going this way as far as basketball goes. Basketball. But his intelligence and his decision-making was going in the opposite direction. Brings the guns, gets arrested, loses his Adidas contract under the moral character clause. He pleaded guilty to a felony and loses that $40 million Adidas contract. And then after he comes back, career starts going not this way, starts going downhill. That's what happened. That's what happens when you have this kind of air about you, this kind of energy, this negative energy about you. Positive things don't come to you, and positive people. The kind of energy that you exude is the kind of energy you will get back. So I want young people to listen to this. So he gets in trouble with the gun deal. His career gets shortened. He ends up getting a $60-something million payout on that $113 million contract. He ended up going to Orlando, didn't do much. Career over. Said he was depressed for a number of years. And then in the last 5 years, I think as a result of him starting to do those Vlad interviews about NBA players and how they live, Gilbert Arenas got a second awakening. And that's the beautiful thing about this social media thing. Anybody, if you have something to say, put up a YouTube channel and go at it. And don't pay attention to the haters and the critics. So thankful to Vlad TV, Gilbert started garnering an audience and started Gil's Arena, his own podcast and YouTube channel. Kenyon Martin is on there. There's a couple other ex-NBA players that are on there. And now recently, so I'll give you the backstory. He was also engaged at one time to a young lady, and they have a child together. Gilbert Arenas, his son, was a McDonald's All-American. I think he's going to the University of Arizona. He's a top 20 player and a potential NBA prospect. Remember, Gilbert Arenas is 43, not 23. Has a 17, 18-year-old son. Has that backstory. Told you he dropped in the draft, went second round, wasn't making a lot of money, living paycheck to paycheck, was broke before the season had even started. Other NBA players had to help him. The door opens. He signs these big contracts with the Washington Wizards. So you'd have thought he'd have learned and been humbled by some of those things. And the gun situation came about. You'd have thought that would have humbled him. And now you're hearing allegations that Gilbert Arenas was involved or allegedly involved in these illegal poker games at his Encino mansion in California. Gilbert is from California. And now you're hearing that he got arrested by the feds. The feds. So you got Shannon Sharp with his craziness and his debacle, and that civil situation with that young lady could turn criminal. Remember with Sean Puffy Combs, Cassie had a civil suit against him. He paid it out, and then the feds came back, and Homeland Security came back in and charged Sean Puffy Combs criminally. Now you have Gilbert Arenas, who has not learned his lesson from years ago and all the travails and tribulations that he's been through, that if these allegations of him setting up these illegal poker games, even with a suspected Israeli crime boss and figure, this is being an idiot at the top of the food chain. What is going on with Shannon Sharp, Gilbert Arenas? They got to get Donkey of the Year. This doesn't not make an ounce of sense. It says that Gilbert Arenas of Woodland Hills is charged with 1 count of conspiracy to operate an illegal gambling business, 1 count of operating an illegal gambling business, and 1 count of making false statements to federal investigators. So he got arrested along with 4 or 5 other people, and even this supposed Israeli crime figure. Gilbert Arenas, his arrogance and his non-reality space that he is living in and the immaturity, somebody needs to shake the tree of dumbness out of him. It makes himself look bad. It's embarrassing for his family, and it's embarrassing for him to be a 43-year-old black ex-NBA professional to be involved in this kind of nonsensical, illegal business, allegedly. But what it tells you is that your time is your most important commodity. Gilbert Arenas has too much time on his hands. Instead of picking up a book and learning about finance, and mind you, Gilbert Arenas also said on a Vlad TV interview at one point that his financial advisor or somebody in his business circle had absconded over $5 million from him. $5 million gone. He wasn't even aware of it. And then he had to sue and all of this stuff to try to get some of the money back. So he has multiple things that have taken place in his life that should have humbled him, instead of him running at 100 miles an hour in his car of life, he should have slowed down to 20 miles an hour, where you can smell the roses and appreciate raising your son and your family. And so now he got arrested, and these are the people that are involved, the alphabet agencies that are involved in the arrest. This is nothing to play with. You're talking about Homeland Security, the Northridge office, the Los Angeles Police Department's Major Crime Division, Transnational Organized Crime Section, and the IRS Criminal Investigation. Because, of course, if he's participating in these illegal gambling schemes and making money off of them, and he's not reporting that as earned income, the IRS is going to come. And in this situation, they're saying that according to the indictment returned on July 15th and unsealed from September of 2021, this is not something new. This 4 years ago to July 2022, Gilbert Arenas and the other defendants operate an illegal gambling business. They said where he, out of this ENCINO mansion, they staged these games, and it was like, oh, here we go, that this one gentleman, Gershman, hired young women who, in exchange for tips, served drinks, provided massages, and offered companionship to the poker players. The women were charged a percentage of their earnings from working the games. There were chefs, valets, and armed security guards that were also hired to staff these illegal games. Okay, did you hear that? They hired women to serve drinks, provide massages, and offer companionship. Now he's getting into the Puffy zone. The alleged P word is there prostitution going on in this situation, along with the illegal gambling. What in the world could Gilbert Arenas have been thinking about to the point where, and then he gets arrested. He gets out the same day. He goes on a live, like I'm doing now, where he's playing Madden, and he's laughing about the arrest and saying that he's going to tell. Well, if you got 5 other defendants involved, you got chefs, valets, and armed security guards who were all there, and women who were hired to give massages, drinks, and provide companionship. They're all going to testify against Gilbert Arenas. There's no way that he can plead ignorance. And then this is at his home. You can't get any dumber than this. And for these athletes today, this has got to be the toughest time to be famous, rich, famous. These athletes' contracts of public knowledge. Everybody wants to chase the bag. Nobody wants to go to school. Nobody wants to learn anything. Instead of Gilbert Arenas participating in alleged illegal poker games, Gilbert Arenas, who has made at least $200 million in the NBA 15 years ago, he should be going to somebody's college or grad school getting an MBA in finance and management. Spend your time with his face in a book, developing his maturity level, passing along the positive things about being a grown man to his son that's up next to possibly be an NBA prospect. Instead, Gilbert Arenas is participating in all of this silliness and negativity that's not bringing anything potentially positive to his whole cachet of life. And he's putting everything at risk, no different than Shannon Sharp. And you have past history of other black athletes that have gotten caught up in all kinds of webs of chaos. Tiger Woods and his situation with his ex-wife. O.J. Simpson, of course, and that situation with his ex-wife and Ron Goldman. Who else can we say? Tiger Woods, Kobe Bryant with the allegation and the indictment that went against him in the rape case in Colorado. So Gilbert has seen all of this stuff. And for him to have this capricious attitude that he is above the fray and that he can even think that the light's not being shined on him. He's got a podcast, a YouTube channel. He's an ex-NBA player. He's on social media every day. His son is in the spotlight as a potential NBA player soon. Everybody's watching him. Gilbert Arenas has 2 eyeballs, but there are 1,000 eyeballs watching him. And then you have all these people hired for these alleged illegal games. He doesn't think that they're going to tell on him. So he gets on a live after he gets arrested, and he's laughing, saying that he don't know nothing, he don't know what's going on, and he's not taking this thing serious. Everything's funny to him. Oh, by the way, the other ex-NBA player that's on his Gil's Arenas is Nick Young, who was once engaged to the female rapper from Australia. What is her name? Iggy Azalea. But anyway, so he's laughing on the live that night. Of course, the feds are watching that. They're watching that. This is the new way for you to go to jail, is to talk too much on these social media platforms. Just ask these rappers out of Atlanta, Chicago, these drill rappers. They're getting on these particular YouTube channels and interviews and talking about all kinds of crimes. They're putting in their music. Ask Lil Durk, who's going through some stuff that's based out of California and Atlanta. And where is this blinder that these entertainment people and these athletes, where they think that no one's watching them and they can get away with any crime? There is surveillance everywhere, every square foot in the United States of America. Nothing is going unseen. And remember, in today's time, the unseen will become seen and the unbelievable will become believable. Everybody's chasing the bag by any means necessary. Nobody wants to go to school. They want to get it by any means, as no matter how inhumane, how spiritless it is. And what is happening in our society today is that our moral, ethical compass is dying a little bit every day. What I will tell you, the day that you stop learning is the day that you start dying and stop living. The day that you stop learning is the day that you start dying, and is the day you stop living spiritually, psychologically, mentally, emotionally, physically. So we have to look at these examples and make sure that we don't repeat the same behavior that some of these guys are doing that know better and should do better. Gilbert Arenas is in some hot water with these agencies that are after him. Homeland Security, it sounds very similar to Puffy, as I said. Homeland Security, the IRS, the FBI, the Criminal Division, the Transnational Organized Crime Section, Assistant U.S. Attorney Samuel Diaz is handling the case. So yeah, the Los Angeles Police Department's Major Crime Division and the Transnational Organized Crime Section. These are terms most people haven't even heard of. So for Gilbert to think that this is a joke, this is not a joke. Just ask Lil Boosie, who just pleaded guilty to another Fed case, and this is a gun case out of California again. When he was in San Diego, he just pleaded guilty. Another black entertainer. We are seeing way too many, and Bootsy is in his 40s with children. If you know better, you do better. Tell me what you think. This has been the Trevor Donald Experience. Manifest your truth in a positive, righteous, and God-fearing way.